The Galactic Council chamber floated in the silent heart of the Andromeda Nexus, a massive ring-shaped station built over centuries by dozens of species working together, or at least pretending to. Inside the main hall, the air shimmered with translation fields and the soft hum of life support systems tuned to hundreds of different biologies. Tall, spindly Xanthari stood beside armored Krellian delegates, their breathing masks hissing faintly. Smaller, multi-eyed Veln diplomats tapped nervous rhythms on their datapads. It was a place where wars were avoided with words, where treaties were signed in light instead of blood. Or so they liked to believe. At the center of it all stood Daniel Hayes. He was human, average in height, dressed in a plain gray suit that looked almost dull compared to the glittering robes and armored vests around him, but his eyes held something the others didn't. A quiet certainty like a man who had already made up his mind long before walking into the room. He carried no weapon, no entourage, just a small data chip in his palm and a comm badge pinned to his lapel. For weeks, the Council had been debating the latest incident near Proxima Centauri. A human civilian transport, the Aurora Dawn, had vanished during a routine supply run. 73 souls aboard, no distress signal, no wreckage, just empty space where a ship should have been. Earth had demanded answers. The Krellians denied involvement. The Council launched an investigation, as it always did, and as always it found nothing conclusive. But Daniel hadn't come to argue about investigations. He stepped onto the speaking platform and the room fell still. Even the ever-chattering Veln stopped clicking their mandibles. A hush spread like cold water. Without greeting anyone, without bowing or offering the usual diplomatic pleasantries, Daniel activated the holoprojector built into the dais. A flicker of blue light rose into the air, resolving into shaky footage. It showed stars, then the distant shape of a transport vessel, unmistakably human with its white hull and red solar fins. Then from the darkness a sleek angular warship emerged. Its hull bore no insignia, but its design was known across the quadrant, Krellian Mark IV patrol cruiser. The footage zoomed in slightly, grainy but clear enough. Energy signatures spiked. A single beam of violet plasma lanced out from the warship. The Aurora Dawn exploded in a silent bloom of fire and metal. The camera feed cut out a second later. Gasps rippled through the chamber. Several human observers in the gallery stood up, faces pale. A Krellian delegate slammed a clawed fist on his console. Fabrication, he growled through his mask. This proves nothing. Daniel didn't look at him. He just stood there, hands at his sides, voice calm but firm. We recovered this from a deep-range buoy that survived the blast. It's time-stamped, geolocated, and verified by 3 independent AI forensic systems. The Krellian ship didn't just appear. It followed the Aurora Dawn for 6 hours before attacking. No warning, no hail. Just destruction. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. This is the 7th time in 6 months. 7 ships. Over 400 civilians. Each time, your investigations end with the same phrase, inconclusive evidence. Each time you ask us for patience. Each time we give it, while our people die in silence. His voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. The anger was there, not in volume, but in the stillness behind his eyes. We are done waiting. We are done begging for fairness in a system that only works for those who built it. Effective immediately, Earth is severing all diplomatic ties with the Galactic Council and its member states. A murmur rose instantly. Delegates shouted over each other, some in disbelief, others in outrage. A Xanthari elder leaned forward, her long fingers trembling. Ambassador Hayes, you cannot mean this. Diplomacy is the only path to peace. Daniel finally looked at her. Peace isn't given to those who are ignored. It's earned by those who demand respect. He tapped his comm badge once. A soft chime echoed through the hall. All human embassies are closing. All communication channels will go dark in 1 hour. Do not attempt to contact us. We will not respond. Then he turned and walked away. No dramatic exit, no final speech. Just footsteps on polished alloy, growing quieter until he disappeared through the chamber's rear archway. Panic followed in his wake. Krellian delegates demanded emergency sessions. Sithari ambassadors tried to patch through to their human contacts, only to get error messages. Within minutes, news feeds across the galaxy lit up with headlines, "Humans withdraw." Earth goes silent. Council in crisis. Back on Earth, in the quiet corridors of the Geneva diplomatic complex, staff packed up personal items, Flags were taken down, data cores wiped clean. In orbit, the United Earth fleet shifted from peacetime protocols to silent readiness. Ships powered up their long-range sensors, defense grids activated. Not for war, but for watchfulness. Daniel Hayes didn't return to his office. He boarded a shuttle bound for Luna, where President Lena Ortiz waited in a secure bunker beneath the Sea of Serenity. She met him at the airlock, arms crossed, face unreadable. "Did you show them?" she asked. "I showed them everything," he replied. She nodded once. "Then it begins." On the surface, the moon looked the same, gray, silent, eternal. But beneath it, humanity had already changed. No more explanations, no more compromises. The galaxy had treated them as junior partners, as noisy newcomers who didn't understand the greater balance. Now, they would learn what happened when the quiet ones stopped talking. Across the stars, species that had never taken humans seriously began to wonder, what would Earth do next? Would they attack? Would they hide? Or would they simply disappear, taking their technology, their medicine, their ingenuity with them, leaving the galaxy poorer, weaker, and suddenly very alone? No one knew. And for the first time in centuries, the Galactic Council had no answer. They only had silence, and silence in the vast dark between stars was the loudest sound of all. The silence from Earth spread like a cold wave through the galaxy. At first, many thought it was a bluff. Humans were known for their loud protests and dramatic exits, but they always came back. They needed trade, alliances, protection, or so the other species believed. But days passed, then weeks, and no human voice returned to the diplomatic channels. No cargo ships left Sol System. No research data was shared. Even the public EarthNet feeds went dark, replaced by a single message. Diplomatic relations suspended indefinitely. On Earth, life continued, but with a new rhythm. President Lena Ortiz addressed the world from a secure broadcast center beneath the Rocky Mountains. Her words were simple and direct. "We are not at war, but we will no longer pretend that fairness exists in a system that ignores our losses. From this moment, Earth and all its colonies operate under full sovereignty. We ask for nothing. We expect nothing. And we will tolerate no more violations." Across the planet, people watched her speech in homes, schools, and factories. Some were afraid. Others felt a strange pride. For generations, humanity had tried to fit into the Galactic Council's rules, often bending their own values to keep the peace. Now they stood alone, and together. In orbit, the United Earth Defense Command activated Protocol Veil. Civilian ships were recalled from deep space. Freighters that once carried grain to Martian outposts or medical supplies to Titan now docked at Luna shipyards. Engineers worked around the clock, stripping out cargo holds and installing reinforced bulkheads, sensor baffles, and emergency jump drives. They weren't building warships, not yet, but they were making sure every vessel could survive if things turned violent. On Mars, Commander Marcus Boone stood on the observation deck of Olympus Base, watching red dust swirl across the plains. He had spent 20 years as a rescue pilot, pulling stranded miners and broken-down freighters out of asteroid fields. Now he wore a different uniform, black with silver trim, no rank insignia. He had been quietly reassigned to a new unit, Fleet Shadow. Its mission was simple: protect human interests without drawing attention. No flags, no broadcasts, just presence. Back in the Andromeda Nexus, the Galactic Council descended into chaos. Counselor Vex of the Zenthor hegemony demanded emergency sessions almost daily. "The humans are acting like children," he hissed during one meeting, his voice distorted by his translator. "They storm off and expect us to chase them." But not everyone agreed. Ambassador Relo of the Sithari Conquered sat quietly, her 4 eyes scanning the room. The Sithari had long respected human innovation. Their own cities used Earth-designed atmospheric recyclers. Their children studied human mathematics. She tried calling her old friend, a cultural liaison named Elena Ruiz. The call failed. She sent a message through a neutral courier. It came back unread, marked "Return to Sender." Even neutral species felt the change. The Velm, small insectoid traders who moved quietly between systems, reported that human relay stations, once open to all, now required special clearance. When they asked for access, they received no reply. Without those relays, messages took weeks longer to travel. Trade slowed. Prices rose. Medicines made with human nanotech became scarce. Then came the first real sign that Earth wasn't just hiding. They were preparing. A Krellian patrol near the Helios Drift reported strange sensor ghosts, faint echoes that appeared and vanished in seconds. At first, they dismissed it as solar interference. But when 3 of their scout drones went silent in the same sector, they sent a cruiser to investigate. It found nothing, just empty space and a single drifting data buoy. The buoy contained no message, no threat. Just a looped recording of the Aurora Dawn's final moments, the same footage Daniel Hayes had shown in the council chamber. The Krellians called it a provocation. The Zenthari called it a warning. The truth was simpler: Earth was watching, and they were making sure no one forgot what started this. On Earth, schools began teaching new lessons, not just history or science, but survival. Children learned how to purify water, how to read star charts without AI help, how to identify alien ship signatures. In factories, production lines shifted from consumer goods to essential parts: solar cells, oxygen scrubbers, fusion cores. The mood wasn't fearful, it was focused. Like a family locking its doors not because they expect a storm, but because they respect its power. President Ortiz met with her advisors in a windowless room deep underground. Maps of the Sol system glowed on the walls. Red markers showed potential threat zones. Blue markers showed human assets. "We're not looking for a fight," she said. "But if they think silence means weakness, they'll learn otherwise." Meanwhile, in the outer colonies, places like Epsilon Eridani and Tau Ceti, human settlers received new orders. Form local defense councils, store extra rations, keep comms encrypted. Many had lived for years under the assumption that the council would protect them. Now they realized they had only each other. One evening, on a small farm orbiting Proxima Centauri b, a woman named Carla Jensen stood on her greenhouse balcony, looking out at the red dwarf star. Her husband had been on the Aurora Dawn. She hadn't cried since the news came. Instead, she doubled her crop yields, shared seeds with neighbors, and taught her kids how to fix a broken airlock. When a Sithari trader passed by offering sympathy and supplies, she declined politely. "We're fine," she said. "We've got what we need." That phrase, "we've got what we need," began to echo across human space. It wasn't arrogance. It was resolve. Back in the council chamber, debates grew louder, more desperate. Some species urged military action. "Teach them their place," snarled a Krellian warlord. Others warned against it. "Humans may be few," said an old Velon elder, "but they are clever. And when cornered, they do not run. They build." No one knew what Earth would do next. But one thing was clear. The galaxy had taken humanity for granted. And now, in the quiet that followed their departure, every species felt the weight of that mistake. The humans hadn't shouted. They hadn't fired a single shot. They had simply walked away, and in doing so had shaken the foundation of everything the Council thought it knew. Months passed, and the silence from Earth grew heavier. The galaxy adjusted, but not well. Trade routes that once hummed with human freighters now moved slower, clogged by older ships and outdated navigation systems. Medical shortages spread as nanite-based treatments, once freely shared by Earth's biolabs, became rare. Even the air on some colony worlds grew stale without human-made atmospheric filters. The Council tried to fill the gaps, but their solutions were clumsy, expensive, and slow. Humans had made things look easy. Now, everyone saw how much they had truly depended on them. Then, the first real sign of human action appeared, not with a declaration, but with disappearance. The Helios Drift was a rich asteroid field near the border of Krellian and Zenthari space. For years, both powers had mined it under a shaky truce, using automated drones and small crews. One morning, a routine supply ship arrived to rotate personnel and deliver parts. It found nothing. No drones, no crew quarters, no comm signals, just empty docking arms and silent rock. The mining station itself was gone, cleanly removed as if it had never existed. Scans showed no explosion, no debris field. Only a faint energy residue that matched human stealth jump signatures. And floating near the site, tethered to a dead comms buoy, was a small metal plate. Etched into it in plain galactic standard script were 3 words: "Remember Proxima." Panic rippled through the Council. The Krellians accused the Zenthari of staging the event to frame them. The Zenthari denied it and pointed fingers back. But intelligence units from neutral systems quietly compared the energy traces to old human naval logs. The match was undeniable. Earth had done this, but why? And how the answer lay with Marcus Boone. He wasn't a general or a politician. He was a pilot, quiet, precise, and deeply familiar with the void between stars. After decades of rescue missions, he knew every trick for hiding in plain sight. Now he commanded a small, unmarked fleet operating out of the Oort cloud. His ships weren't warships in the traditional sense. They were retrofitted freighters and survey vessels, painted matte black, stripped of all identifying marks, and fitted with stolen Krellian sensor dampeners and human-built AI jammers. They moved like ghosts. His orders were clear: no direct attacks, no killing, but disrupt, disable, remind. The Helios drift operation had taken weeks of planning. His team had slipped in during a solar flare, masked their approach with decoy signals, and used magnetic tethers to haul the entire mining module into a waiting cargo hold. The crew, 10 Krellians and 8 Xanthari, were left unharmed on an escape pod with enough supplies to last until rescue. The message wasn't about cruelty. It was about consequence. News of the incident spread fast. At first, many dismissed it as rumor. But when 3 more outposts, 2 Krellian listening posts and a Xanthari fuel depot, vanished over the next 6 weeks, doubt turned to fear. Each time the same pattern: no violence, no demands, just removal. And each time a simple message left behind. Remember Proxima. Council security scrambled to track the Phantom fleet. Patrols doubled. Sensor nets expanded. But Boone's ships used old human freighter routes. Paths most species ignored because they were too slow or too risky. Humans, however, had spent centuries mastering those routes out of necessity. While others relied on flashy warp lanes, Earth's pilots knew the quiet backroads of space. On Earth, no one spoke of Boone's missions. Officially, the government denied involvement. Unofficially, engineers in hidden shipyards worked faster. AI cores were reprogrammed to mimic civilian traffic. Cargo drones were fitted with micro-jump drives. Every action was designed to avoid war, but to make war too costly for anyone who thought Earth was weak. In the outer colonies, settlers noticed changes too. Supply drops arrived without warning. Food, medicine, spare parts, left in sealed pods with no markings. When scouts tried to trace the delivery ships, they found only empty space. It was as if Earth was watching over its own, silently from the dark. Back in the Andromeda Nexus, the Council's unity cracked further. Younger species, the ones who had benefited most from human cooperation, began to question the old order. "Why did we let this happen?" asked a young Veln delegate during a closed session. "They offered us knowledge, not weapons, and we treated them like beggars at our table." The Krellians grew more aggressive, pushing for a full blockade of soul space. But the Xanthari hesitated. Their economy was suffering. Their people were asking why they were punishing Earth when the real issue was their own failure to act after Proxima. Meanwhile, Boone's fleet struck again, this time closer to home. A surveillance satellite orbiting Mars, placed there years ago by the Council under the guise of scientific cooperation, suddenly went dark. When Krellian techs tried to reboot it remotely, they found its core memory wiped clean and its thrusters locked. A new signal pulsed from its antenna for exactly 10 seconds before it self-destructed. The message was audio only, spoken in calm, clear English. "You watched us. Now we watch you." The psychological effect was greater than any explosion. For the first time, the galaxy realized that humans weren't hiding. They were waiting. And they knew more than anyone thought. On Luna, President Ortiz reviewed the latest reports. She didn't smile, but there was a quiet satisfaction in her eyes. "They thought silence meant surrender," she said to no one in particular. "Now they know it meant preparation." In a hidden hangar on Ceres, Marcus Boone stood beside his ship, the UNS Wren. It looked like a junk hauler, rusted and worn. But inside it carried enough tech to blind a battlecruiser. He checked his flight plan one last time. Next target? A Krellian data hub near Sirius. Not to destroy it, just to borrow its logs and leave a reminder. As he climbed aboard, he thought of the Aurora Dawn, of the 73 names etched into a memorial wall back on Earth. He wasn't fighting for revenge. He was fighting for respect. And in the cold, endless dark, that was the only thing worth defending. The galaxy had ignored humanity's pain. Now it would feel the weight of their patience and the precision of their silence. The Galactic Council was breaking apart and everyone could feel it. What had once been a grand alliance of 200 species now felt like a house of cards in a stiff wind. Arguments that used to be settled with calm debate now ended in shouting matches. Trust once thin but present had vanished, and at the center of it all stood the empty chair where Earth's ambassador used to sit, a silent reminder of what had been lost. It started with the data dump. One morning, without warning, every public terminal in the Nexus, every embassy server, every open news channel across the galaxy received the same encrypted file. It came with no sender, no message, just a single line of text. See for yourself. When decrypted, the file contained thousands of documents, trade logs, surveillance records, internal council memos, all pointing to a pattern no one could ignore. For years, human colonies had been quietly stripped of resources, rare minerals from Mars, water ice from Europa, even medical patents from Earth labs, all funneled away through shell companies tied to Krellian and Xanthari interests. Worse, the file showed that council investigators had known about it. They had buried the evidence, called it minor discrepancies, and told Earth to be patient. The reaction was immediate. Smaller species, the ones who relied on human technology to survive, felt betrayed. The Veln, whose entire food production depended on Earth-engineered algae strains, held emergency meetings. The Cytheri, whose cities ran on human-designed power grids, demanded answers. Even neutral observers, like the ocean-dwelling Mirel, released statements condemning the Council's double standards. President Lena Ortiz did not gloat. She did not appear on screens or give interviews. But from a hidden broadcast node near Neptune, a short message was sent, not to the Council but directly to the people of the galaxy. In simple, clear words, she explained that Earth had not acted out of anger, but out of necessity. We shared our knowledge because we believed in cooperation, she said. But cooperation cannot exist when one side takes and the other only gives. We are not your enemy, but we will no longer be your tool. The Krellians denied everything. Their warlords claimed the data was forged, part of a human plot to turn the galaxy against them. But their denials rang hollow. Too many records matched too many independent sources. Even their own traders began to question the leadership. On Krell Prime, protests broke out in port cities, workers angry that their government had risked trade with Earth over greed. The Xanthari were quieter, but their crisis was deeper. Their society valued order and logic above all. To learn that their leaders had lied, not just to humans but to their own people, shook their faith in the entire system. Elder councilors resigned. Young diplomats demanded reform. For the first time in centuries, the Xanthari hegemony faced internal unrest. Meanwhile, Earth remained silent. No new attacks, no more vanished outposts, just quiet observation. But that silence was more powerful than any threat. Species that had once dismissed humans as emotional and impulsive now saw them as patient, strategic, and deeply principled. They hadn't lashed out blindly. They had gathered proof. They had waited. And when they acted, they did so with precision, not rage. On Mars, Carla Jensen, the widow from Proxima, received a package. Inside was a small data chip and a handwritten note. The note read, "Your husband's name is in the archive. The truth is public now." She plugged the chip into her home terminal and watched as footage of the Aurora Dawn's final moments played again. But this time, with added logs showing the Krellian ship's command codes, its fuel logs, its return path to a hidden base. It was undeniable. She didn't cry. She sent copies to every news outlet she could reach. Back in the Nexus, Ambassador Relo of the Cythari made a bold move. She called for a special assembly, not under council authority, but as a private gathering of willing species. She invited the Veln, the Mirel, the Young Cathari Collective, and a dozen others. The topic? Rebuilding trust without Earth. The meeting was held in a neutral station near Orion's belt. No council observers were allowed. There, for the first time, species spoke openly about their fears. The Veln admitted they couldn't feed their people without human algae strains. The Mirel confessed their water purifiers were failing without Earth-made filters. The Cathari, a newly spacefaring species, said their entire education system was built on human science texts. They all realized something terrible. The galaxy had grown dependent on humanity's generosity and had repaid it with neglect. Some suggested sending a peace envoy to Earth. Others argued it was too late. But Relo offered a different idea. "We do not ask for forgiveness," she said. "We offer fairness. Bilateral agreements. No council oversight. Just honest trade verified by both sides." It was a radical thought. Deals made not through a central authority but directly between equals. On Earth, intelligence units monitored the meeting. They didn't interfere. They just watched and recorded in orbit around Jupiter. Daniel Hayes reviewed the transcripts. He had not spoken publicly since walking out of the council chamber. But now he turned to President Ortiz and said, "They're starting to understand." She nodded. "Good, but understanding isn't enough. They have to change. The old order was crumbling, not because Earth had destroyed it, but because it had been built on lies. And now in the quiet aftermath, new possibilities were forming. Ones based not on power, but on truth. The galaxy had spent centuries thinking humans were the students. Now, they were learning that sometimes the quiet ones teach the hardest lessons. 1 year after Daniel Hayes walked out of the Galactic Council chamber, a single human ship drifted into neutral space near the Cygnus Exchange. It was small, unmarked, and carried no weapons. Its hull bore no flag, no name, just a plain gray finish that reflected the starlight like calm water. On board was Elena Ruiz, once a cultural attaché, now something else entirely. A messenger, a test, a quiet offer. She did not contact the council. She did not broadcast her arrival. Instead, she sent a simple, open-frequency message to every species known to trade in the exchange. "I come to speak, not to demand. Meet me if you wish alone." Most ignored her. The Krellians called it a trap. The Xanthari remained silent, still reeling from their own internal crisis. But others came. The Sithari arrived first, their sleek silver vessel docking gently beside hers. Then the Veln in their bulbous, organic-looking craft. The Mirel followed, their ship shaped like a slow-moving jellyfish. A dozen smaller polities joined them, species that had never held real power in the council but had always respected Earth's fairness. Elena met them not in a grand hall, but in a shared virtual chamber, her image projected from the bridge of her ship. She wore no uniform, just a simple blue jacket. In her hands she held a data crystal. "This is not a treaty," she said. "It is a starting point. Equal terms. Verified actions. No hidden clauses. If you break it, we walk away. No warnings. No second chances." She laid out the terms. Trade in medical nanites for rare metals. Shared access to deep space navigation charts. Joint research on clean fusion. Every agreement would be recorded, time-stamped, and open to both sides. No council oversight. No middlemen. Just direct, honest exchange. The Scythari were the first to agree. Their cities were still struggling without Earth's tech, and they saw no shame in admitting it. The Veln followed, desperate to restore their food supply. One by one, the others signed on. Not out of fear, but out of respect. They had learned that humanity did not bluff. When they spoke, they meant it. When they left, they stayed gone. Back on Earth, people watched the news feeds with quiet hope. There were no celebrations, no parades, just a sense of relief that the long silence might finally lead to something better. In schools, teachers spoke of responsibility, not victory. In factories, workers kept building, not for war, but for the future. The Galactic Council tried to respond. Councillor Vex demanded that all member states reject these backroom deals. He called them a threat to galactic unity. But his words rang empty. Unity built on lies was no unity at all. Species that once obeyed the council without question now made their own choices. The old order was fading, not with a bang, but with a whisper of change. Marcus Boone's fleet stood down. The UNS Wren returned to dry dock near Pluto. Its stealth systems powered off for the first time in months. Boone himself took a transport back to Earth, landing in the Arizona desert where he had grown up. He walked through empty streets, past solar farms and quiet homes, and felt something he hadn't in years: peace. President Lena Ortiz gave no grand speech. She simply updated Earth's official stance. "We remain outside the council, but we are open to honest partnerships with any who seek them." It was not an invitation to return to the old ways. It was a door left slightly ajar, for those willing to walk through it with clean hands. On Mars, Carla Jensen planted a new crop of wheat in her greenhouse. This time, the seeds came from Earth, sent not as aid, but as part of a trade deal with the Veln. She smiled as she watered them, thinking of her husband. Justice had not come in the form of fire or revenge. It had come in truth, in dignity, in the quiet rebuilding of what had been broken. The galaxy changed slowly after that. New networks formed, loose, flexible, built on trust instead of treaties. The council still existed, but its power shrank. It became more of a forum than a government, a place for discussion, not control. And Earth? Earth became something new. Not a member of the old club, but a quiet force that others looked to when fairness was needed. Years later, historians would call it the Great Reckoning, not because of battles or explosions, but because of a single choice: to stop talking and start acting. Humanity had not conquered anyone. They had simply refused to be ignored, and in doing so, they had reshaped the galaxy without firing a single shot. Elena Ruiz never returned to diplomacy. She settled on a small island in the Pacific, teaching language to children who would one day speak to stars. Daniel Hayes disappeared from public life, rumored to be advising young leaders in the outer colonies. Lena Ortiz finished her term and retired to a farm in Oregon, where she grew apples and watched the night sky. The message they left behind was simple: respect is not given. It is earned, and sometimes the loudest statement is made in silence. The galaxy learned that lesson well, and for the first time in a long time it listened.